Welcome to Build Insights, the podcast. Today we welcome Phil Chell, the CEO of Chiron AI and Hera Waterproofing. We're going to be discussing the introduction of AI into the built environment and what the future looks like. Phil, welcome to the podcast. We've been talking about you being here for a while, so it's great to finally have you with us. Obviously, we've spoken, and I know a little bit about you, but I'm keen to know more. For the sake of the people watching the podcast, perhaps you could introduce yourself, what you've been doing, what brings you here today, and what you want to do next.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ben. So my name's Phil Chell, and I'm the CEO of Hera Waterproofing Limited and Chiron AI Limited. Two very different businesses. One's a flat roofing manufacturing business, and the other one's an AI integration and bespoke build platform. Two really sort of opposing businesses. But so I've worked in the flat roofing industry for pretty much 15 years, having worked for sort of some of the big incumbents in the market. And then a couple of years back, I just decided that I wanted to sort of go out on my own and see. I thought there was a better way of doing things than the way the market was operating. So I set up Hera Waterproofing, incorporated in February 2023. And I went from working for sort of a big corporate player in the market. I was quite a senior in the business, had a number of people, there's direct reports and a huge admin support staff in the background, 120 people, sort of 50 mil turnover business. Going from that to then being on my own was sort of quite a scary jump. But I've always had a keen interest in the tech industry and that market. And the start of Hera sort of coincided with the launch of ChatGPT, which is the main AI model that most people would be aware of. If you ask anybody about artificial intelligence, the first thing they think of is ChatGPT.
Yeah, you get bandied about quite a bit.
So at that time it was new and fresh, and I remember when it came out, it was impossible to get a login because everybody was trying to use it, and I kind of knew a little bit about OpenAI, that a company that launched ChatGPT. They're known as a frontier model builder, so that there's sort of 5 or 6 people out there that build these actual frontier models. So there's OpenAI. Obviously Google have got their own. Apple have got their own. There's a company called Anthropic as well. So there's these big sort of companies that have been slowly building in the background for sort of 10 years. Billions of dollars have been spent building these huge platforms. But everybody just knows ChatGPT because it's the one that came to the forefront a couple of years back. And what I realised very quickly was that it's possible to integrate some of the stuff that technology does into the company that I was running on my own, to allow me to run the business. We started turning over quite a bit of money quite quickly, and I was doing it all on my own. And as the business grew and we started employing more people and we started getting a name into the marketplace, a lot of our clients are coming to us and saying, so these building surveyors, our main clients are coming to us saying, well, you've done that for your business, could you do that for us? And I realised that there was a market opportunity there to sort of build a business out where we could sell some of these integrations to businesses. And that's where Chiron has sort of come into its own, and it's in the last 12 months it's just exploded. I was talking earlier about doing podcasts, and I did a podcast about 6 weeks ago. Within a week of it going out, we picked up a new client in Australia on the back of the podcast, building out bespoke integrations for them. And they're not even from the construction industry randomly. They're actually a waste management company. So Chiron effectively, it does 2 things. It does bespoke integration builds for companies, and I'll give some examples of what that means in a minute. But the main thing that we're building what we're calling the everything platform for the built environment. And what we mean by that is yourself working in the industry, there's an awful lot of menial and repetitive tasks that happen in any job in the industry, but certainly in the construction industry, where you're doing a lot of the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. So our platform effectively removes that need to do that. So it does a lot of the heavy lifting in the middle for people. The first product we're building, which is called Minerva, which is launching in the summer, it can reduce the tender analysis process, both at pre-tender QA check for a building surveyor, right through to post-tender analysis and award. It can reduce that timeline by about 90%. So a building surveyor can take a week to do a tender analysis. Our platform does it in about 30 minutes and spits out an answer right there.
Obviously, a very exciting prospect and something I very much look forward to seeing and having a go on when you let me. In terms of the inputs then. So it still requires inputs, obviously.
Yeah.
Is that what's the bigger infrastructure around something like this? Is it going to require a lot of training? Is it relatively user friendly? How do you go about introducing something like this into the market?
So we've built it as user friendly as possible. The platform is sort of intuitive as to how you use it. You set an account up and you put the details of the project in, and it's literally drag and drop of documents. So you drag the tender in, drag the pricing document in. And the first thing it does, it will spit out a QA of the tender. And we've built it. The first product we've built is purely about roofing because it's what we know. And what it will do is it will take the pre-tender, the document that's been put together by the building surveyor. It could be 1,000 pages long, as you know. You put these programs together. It reads that document and then analyzes that document against all the relevant regulations that sit behind that project. So it'll go and look at building regulations, it'll look at BRIF T4 testing standards, it'll look at the Building Safety Act, it'll look at anything that's relative, it'll look at the Procurement Act, things like that. Yeah. And it'll give you a PDF that says, right, we think that you've missed these 5 things. We think these 5 things here are ambiguous and you may want to check them. The rest of it's fine. I'll give you an example of what it does. Is we did a tender recently where it went through the platform and there were 2 different return dates in the document. So something dead simple. They'd put a return date in one part of the document as like the 1st of May, and then later in the document it said the 9th of May. Now, all right, it's 8 days difference, but that could cause you could get a legal challenge on the back of that. If one contractor doesn't price it at the right time, they could see they've missed out on the pricing group because of a mistake that's been made in the document.
Yeah.
So it checks things like those. Or you might have somebody that's put a document together and the building's over 7 stories. Yeah, it's not looked at any Building Safety Act regulation or anything. It'll point that out to them straight away. So it's an early. It's like I say, it's a QA check for building surveyors and practices. But yeah, we've made it as simple as possible to use.
Sounds really exciting. So once you've done your initials, you've sort of tender the tender stage, you've got your tender checks back. Obviously, you've made the corrections as required. What's the next phase? You said at the beginning that this is going to be an all-encompassing thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's going to be multiple disciplines, and it's going to take some time to develop. But in terms of what we've got now, does it allow you to then take it through to construction phase?
Yeah. So it allows you to take it through to tender award stage. So you then award it to the contractor who's won it. At the moment, that's where the platform begins and ends. When you build a tech business, it's dead easy to build something and spend a lot of money building it and then put it out to the marketplace, then realise that people actually don't want what you've built. Sure. So you have to build something known as an MVP, a minimum viable product, which is what this is. So it's built around one very small snapshot of the industry, around one part of the industry, which is what we know because it's roofing. We know there's a requirement for it because we've got clients that are actively helping us to build it in the background. They're helping us with the development of it. But eventually we're going to build it to be the everything platform. And we've this is fairly new news to just confirm this, but there's a chap called Andrew Knight who was head of artificial intelligence for RICS. He was there for 15 years. He's recently left RICS and he's joining the board of Chiron AI as a non-exec director to help us sort of map out this over the sort of the wider industry. My understanding is there's 17 pathways once you become qualified through the APC.
Through the RICS.
Yeah, through RICS. Yeah, there's 17 pathways. We've picked a very small part of one of those pathways to build the product to test it on. Andrew's remit in the business is to look at the wider application of this technology across the entire industry and how it can be sort of mapped through those different pathways. So eventually it will become that, but obviously we've got to start what we know first.
Absolutely, and obviously it's so important that it works. So just moving forward with the concept then, just assuming it's available in sort of my arena, if you will, which is going to be construction quality, warranty compliance, etc. Have you got any vision around that in terms of how using the model as it is? Would that, for example, maybe it's easier if I ask some questions. Plan checking is a big aspect of what we do. Would it be usable in the sense that we would give inputs as to what our baseline criteria would be? Yeah, drag and drop the document in, and then the AI would be able to.
Yeah, that's right. So the way the AI stack is built, and I don't want to give too much about how we've built them, but you build it around. We start with the output. What do you want the output to look like? We want it to look like this. Okay, what does the input normally look like? It looks like this. And then we build the stack in the middle that draws those two bits of information together. We've had a lot of people ask us around, well, we're chartered surveyors, we're the ones that should be making these decisions. And that will always be the case. You're always going to need something called human in the loop, which is a tech term that's used, that you have to have somebody checking the front end and the back end to ensure that what's coming out is accurate. But a lot of that heavy lift in the middle that is done repetitively can be removed by doing this.
Yeah, so it's a weapon in the armory, isn't it?
Yeah.
As opposed to a replacement to it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of people that think AI is going to take people's jobs, and I certainly don't think it is. What it is going to do is going to augment people's jobs. And that's what we call it, a labour augmentation platform. It's not going to remove the role of the requirement for a building surveyor. But as you know, you work in a highly regulated industry where you require highly skilled but highly scarce individuals. You can't find building surveyors, project managers, QSs. There's just not enough of them in the industry. And post Grenfell, the requirements for their services are only sort of getting. You need more of them, and there's less of them.
There's more demand for sure, and it's a very focused demand, isn't it? And, in terms of the fire safety, etc., which is obviously very important. But then everything else still has to carry on.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting. Going back to the human in the loop, obviously you've got the whole accountability aspect. And I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where the industry accepts. Maybe we will, but certainly not in the short term where AI has got PI. No. Do you know what I mean?
You say that, but we have.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So you can get a thing called. So one of the issues that you have with a baseline AI model at the moment is something called model drift and hallucinations, which is terms that you might hear spoken about in the wider world when you get these sensational stories on the news.
Yeah.
And what that means is that a hallucination is where the AI has thought something and it's not right. It's completely wrong. That's a hallucination, because they have, to a certain degree, they guess what they think is going to be the answer, and they get it completely wrong. The second thing is a thing called model drift, where it gets one thing slightly wrong, it's not checked. It then gets it slightly wrong again, it's not checked. And it compounds those errors. We've got model drift insurance on the business. Okay. So we've covered against that, but we've mitigated that in the way the stack is built. So in theory, it should never happen. We should never have to call on that insurance because of the way that the model is built. And again, I'm not going to explain how that's built, because that's our moat effectively.
No, 100%. Yeah. So in terms of, there is a level of insurance for you putting that product into the market.
Yeah.
But for my client, for example, they're going to rely on
your expertise, aren't they?
Yeah. So if I was to use this, which I'm very interested in looking at, I think it would be. It's still going to have my name on it at the end of the day. So fundamentally, presumably, there's going to be cross-check opportunities. So if I use this, I control the inputs. Therefore, I control the output.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and so Andrew, that's joining the business, he wrote a white paper about 18 months ago that was sort of a white paper based on the official RICS sort of answer to what AI will look like within the industry, because they know it's going to affect the industry. If you look at the way that AI has affected other more highly regulated industries. So the two biggest ones are finance and law. So the fintech world and the law tech world is massive, because there's a lot of stuff been built into that already. And property is just the next in the line, really, because it's another highly regulated industry. But Andrew wrote a white paper that basically said that RICS are platform agnostic, so they actually don't care what you use, who you use, or how you use it. What they do care about is what you've said, is that ultimately, if you as a RICS chartered surveyor or as a qualified person putting your name on something, you're still responsible to check that what you're saying is accurate.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge we're going to have to overcome as a business, because you are going to get a lot of people who go, well, I'm not going to do that because it's my name on it. But if you think about, we use calculators. Calculators used to get things wrong back in the day. But it's just become a ubiquitous tool that everybody uses now. And AI will be the same. It's just that there's a lot of misunderstanding around the power of it at the moment.
I think there's almost some stigma attached to it as well, I think it all comes down to application. If you misuse AI, it's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and so it'd be interesting to see as this develops what the guidelines are. I would suspect there'll be guidelines for the use of AI rather than really what the AI is capable of doing. Obviously, the more you can do, the better. But it's how you adopt those services, if you will, and then how you present it forwards. accountability is, we bang on about it on this podcast all the time. It's all about accountability and people taking ownership of what they do. But I certainly think there is a huge future for technology to play a part in improving the services that we offer as professionals in this industry, especially if we all get on the same page, because sort of, without going into too much detail on what you've already said, but you can start seeing, well, actually, if everyone's using similar or the same, there's going to be a huge communication advantage that we don't have now. One of the biggest problems I experience in my job, practically, is communication errors, where people, you've got Group A that's got some information, Group B, Group C. We all put it on a shared platform. We don't necessarily present it in the same way. We spend more time talking about information that we can't find than just getting it. Presumably, in an AI world, it will learn what the inputs globally, or there'll be a position where global inputs can be considered to form a common platform. Is that I'm shooting from the hip here?
No, you're absolutely right, and that can happen. It can happen now. That can. But what we're finding is, and this isn't just the construction industry, because, like I said, ironically, we've now picked up clients internationally that aren't construction businesses. But what we're finding is that to build something like that, to give you valuable output, you've got to have your data structured in a way in the first place. And you'd be flabbergasted the size of businesses that are still running stuff on Excel spreadsheets or on a Google Doc shared drive. So the first thing we always say when we talk to a client is, well, what state is your data in now, and how do you manage that data right now? Do you have a particular CRM system that you use? Is data structured in a usable fashion? And many businesses aren't there yet, and that's where we're finding that there's one build we're doing at the moment where we've had to go right back to the beginning with the client to go, right, we can't apply this technology because the basis for the tech of your data just isn't there yet. So,
well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I agree with you. I mean, depending on which area of a business you go into, even departmental wise, they might have different ways of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What would be for anyone listening that's interested, wants to pick up the phone to you and talk to you about this a little bit more? What would be sort of the entry level, base level, or is it more of a bespoke approach that you sit with them?
It depends on which part of our business they'd want to use. The bespoke integration stuff, we need a conversation and a chat to see sort of where they're at. There's elements that we can apply it to, from the most basic thing to sort of quite complex use cases of it. So what we use it for in Hera waterproofing is we get a lot of orders coming, obviously product orders, and we also then send a lot of purchase orders to our supply chain.
Yeah.
So that's all automated now. So what happens is we get a purchase order in from a contractor, and we then get, as soon as it goes into the inbox, within about 30 seconds, I get a WhatsApp to say this order's ready to process. And what the stack does, it is AI, but a lot of it's process automation. It reads the PDF, and then it takes the product code and sticks it in a draft invoice in Xero, and then it checks it against it gets the AI to check the price is accurate, and then it creates the draft invoice and sends it to us to check it. Something like that's quite simple to deploy. The build in the background was difficult to get right. But that's quite a simple thing to deploy, which will save people. It just saves people loads and loads of time. The same when we're sending out orders, we'll start a project, and when the project goes live on our system and we start sort of building out the bills automatically get generated on the back of the specification. So stuff like that is quite easy to implement because we've already built the processes. The Minerva platform, which is the platform that's about to launch for the tender analysis, that's just ready to go. That is, people can just start using that when it launches. So it's literally a case of they get a login, pay the cost, and away they go.
And off they go. Exciting. Yeah. So the future development is going to be down the APC route for the RICS.
Yeah, that's one thing we're looking at. Is I'd like to get to the point where we build the APC We're going to build an APC platform, hopefully, and we're going to give that away for nothing. Give that away for free to the next generation. For a number of reasons, ultimately we're a business. We want to make money, and the thought process behind that is if we can get the next generation of surveyors used to working with this type of technology and using it, and it becomes ubiquitous in their life as they go through their careers and they start practices or start working for the big multinationals. They're just used to using our software, and so it gets mapped into their daily life. I'd like it to be that Chiron becomes a verb, the way that people say just Google it, or they say just Chiron it or just Minerva it. I want it to become a verb.
The vision's strong. I can see that. And you've obviously put a lot of effort and time into this. It's really, really exciting. I'm sat here now thinking about all the possibilities of how something like this could really benefit what I do on a daily
Yeah.
basis. And we have unlimited amounts of data.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges we face is working out what part of that, let's call it a data dump. So specifically towards the end of a major project, you've got all the test and commissioning information coming in, etc., so on and so forth, which needs to be vetted, which needs to be analysed. Simple things, making sure the addresses are correct, making sure the postcodes match, making sure the data, the test data results falls within the parameters of what's required. And as you can imagine, that is an incredibly arduous task. At that point, we're paying a well-paid, qualified professional to read.
Yeah, well, it's a waste. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of their ability, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And it's time consuming, and it's probably not particularly accurate as well. I bet they still make errors because they're humans.
Human error is a big factor, and the reality is, yes, you go I call it snow blindness. So when you've been looking at something for long enough, you've got to take breaks. But again, it's about efficiency, and whilst a human can get through that. One, they don't particularly enjoy it, and that can be demotivating. Two, it's an expensive process, and three, as you say, not often, but occasionally, something might slip through the net. So I've certainly listened to what you've been saying and sort of creating my own ideals with the technology that you presented. I think that would be a fantastic application for something like that. Where thousands of documents can get read in a relatively short amount of time.
We're training our model as well to read technical drawings and photographs as well. So what it can do is it can look at... We've got this in beta testing in Hera, where on our survey app, so when our survey team go out and survey a flat roof, the traditional way is you take a photograph, you write down a note on a piece of paper, there's an upstand, there's an outlet, whatever. Some companies use an app, and they type the app. We're building a survey app now where you take a photograph of an outlet, and it recognises what it is, and it says, right, this is an outlet, this is what's wrong with it, this is what I think we need to do to put it right.
Yeah.
So that technology, what people don't realise is when you build a tech business, when you do something like this, is there's still a lot of human work in the background to get it to work. So the way that computer vision modelling works is, if you want it to recognise a particular thing, you've got to give it at least 100 versions of that thing it's looking at, and then literally draw a line around it pixel by pixel. So of an outlet, and we're doing that at the moment. But once that's done and launched, our survey time will just it'll be instant. Take a picture, it knows what needs to go in there. And it's the same with output documentation for building surveys. It can go, you'll do a QA check on a project, and you'll take a photograph of something, and it can refer that photograph against the drawing to say, well, that actually doesn't look right there, or they've missed this bit out there. That's a long way off yet, but that is coming. But
that's the future, isn't it? I think that's really interesting. I think that is, ironically, whilst very exciting, that is sort of where some surveyors will start going, hang on a minute, I got a job. But of course, go back to what we said just 10 minutes ago. There's still that accountability there that needs to be adopted, and it's understanding. Effectively, you might end up reading in the future. We might end up reading a report that's been generated based on our findings.
Yeah.
But then, as a surveyor, you need to either agree with that report, make amendments to that report.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
but I can really see the potential in this, and I very much look forward to seeing what it does in the future.
Yeah, there's lots of other businesses similar to what we do coming to the market now. There's a lot of VC money being pumped into these businesses. We're really fortunate. We've not had to take any investment for this. We've been able to self-fund, which has been really, really exciting because it gives us the ability to not worry about generating revenue as quickly as possible, and it's allowing us to build products, I believe so, that the industry genuinely wants, that people like you would genuinely find a use for. So it's really exciting.
You're not having to cater to the needs of stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. The stakeholders in Chiron, and me and my co-founder Dave, we make all the decisions. But we're really fortunate. We've got a great network of people that we've known for a long time. I'd love to get you involved in that network as well, to look at building out the platform and building out these products that can really sort of help. This industry served me so well. I've worked in it for such a long time, and whilst it can be stressful and it can be difficult, I love the work I do. I love the fact that the built environment is such an important part of everybody's life, and most people, it just passes them by. They don't realise how important buildings are to them, and it's such an amazing industry, and to have been involved in it for so long, and it's given me an amazing career. yes, we want to make money, but I'm doing this almost philanthropically because I've enjoyed the industry so much. It's nice to be able to give something back.
To be honest, you can tell.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you want to make a difference in this industry, you've really got to care.
Yeah.
And the people that come on this podcast are those people.
Yeah.
To come out of your comfort zone, to sit in front of a load of cameras and the sound recording equipment, and to sort of put your neck on the line and say, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, and I'm really excited about it. That's not just a 9-to-5, and that's someone who really wants to make a difference. And
we do. Yeah,
that's clear as day.
When I worked for previous businesses, I always sort of ran a metric because like I said, I was quite senior certainly in my last job, I was quite senior. I sort of used to run a metric to measure how the business was doing against other players in the market. And the metric I used to use in my head was turnover per employee, revenue per employee, sorry. A lot of tech businesses actually use this as a marker for how well they're doing. And most businesses in our industry run at something between £300,000 and £500,000 per head of employee. You know, we've got Hera now to the best part of £1 million per employee because of the automations that we've built into the company. Wow. Purely because it does so much of the heavy lifting for us in the background that we don't have to do as much of it ourselves. Something of which we're now building out for an architect's practice in London. They've come and asked us to do a similar thing. And like I say, the main thing is around the sort of the automation of workflows around invoice processing and sort of and bill creation, things like that. So that's sort of where the main sort of drive has been. And another thing that's really driven Hera as well, ironically, is away from artificial intelligence. And you're very kind when you said you could tell how passionate I am about what we do. Hera trades very differently to a lot of our competitors. We do things in a very, very different way. In a crowded market, I mean, as amazing as the business, I love the business. We sell rolls of felt, which is how it generates money. Okay, we sell flat roofing, which it's boring. It's quite boring. It's quite boring, what I mean?
But necessary.
You know what I mean? But it's not sexy. It's not interesting. You know. But the thing is, everybody does that, and all the products are pretty much the same. You know, they all last a similar amount of time. They've all got approximately the same level of testing from a B-Roof T4 standard. So what's the differentiator? You know, how do we differentiate ourselves? And that's how the business took off so quickly, is because we did offer. When I was on my own, I did offer a differential in the service that we offer to people, because a lot of these incumbents that have been around for a long time are quite difficult to trade with. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to buy stuff from some of these businesses.
Maybe not as surprised as you think. I think I experience this across the board. You know,
yeah.
The way that you interact with people. I think we said this off before we started recording. You know, the fundamental success of certainly what I do, and I'm starting to think it's what you do as well, is relationships and relatability. Sorry, I cut you off. Finish off. But
no.
You know, it is difficult. Sometimes people just don't want to be worked with.
Yeah, a lot of the bigger players, there's certainly an arrogance to them. And like I say, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I talk about internally with the Hera team, certainly the commercial team, about there's a balance of power when a specification goes into the market. And you've got, there's three main components in that. You've got the manufacturer, which is us. You've got the contractor who wins the work, or the contractors that are tendering for the work. And then you've got the client that sits in that sort of triumvirate of power. And what you tend to find is that the manufacturers, since the CPD came out in flat roofing, Bowder were the ones that invented the CPD in the late 80s. When that happened, the power started to shift away from contractors over to the manufacturing base. And for the last sort of 20, 30 years, a lot of the powers lay within that base of the big players in the flat roofing market. And so they can be quite arrogant and quite difficult to deal with. And we were like, hang on a minute, let's just be the opposite of that. Let's just be quite easy to deal with. And if somebody asks us a question and we can say yes, then we'll just say yes to it. Yeah. And I've found we've taken a lot of work off some of the big players by just doing things like that. Like a lot of them, something as basic as if people order a roll of material or some materials, it's like 7-day minimum turnaround time to get that out the door. We can do it the next day. So it's just like little things like, why would you not do that? I know these are big businesses, but again, it's just like, I built the business. I built Hera like a big business. Yeah. Although it was me on my own. I was working probably 80 hours a week, sort of not selling, not just building systems and processes, all the back end stuff from a warehouse perspective, supply chain, all that kind of management. We built all that because I'd worked in big businesses. Thought I know what it needs to look like, so I built that in the beginning, so that as we've scaled, we've been able to scale with it, and we've not had to then rebuild things. Well, like I say, you'd be flabbergasted how difficult some of these companies are to buy from.
Well, no, I do. I fully appreciate it, and it's very interesting. We're aligned in more ways than what people might think. So we're the best way to sort of explain it is with what we do in Manchester and London. We also do all the Channel Lines. We are your national local surveying.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So if I work with some big outfits in Manchester, we're affiliated with some of the biggest developments in the country. But people still pick up my phone and ring me and I hey Ben, it's not, you don't have to go through a massive pipeline to get to me.
Yeah.
You've got my mobile number. You ring me. If you ring me on a Saturday, I might be a bit grumpy, but I'll certainly talk to you. And it's that approachability, that personal-ish approach of being able to maintain professional boundaries, but say, yeah, look, just speak to me, and you don't have to send me an email 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
To do all these things, and it works. It just works. People respect the people that respect them.
Yeah, I think as well that's an important point, is that you're the face of your business, and the way I'm the face of both my businesses. And if you look at the way that not just our industry, but the way that the business landscape has changed, and I think you've got podcasts like Diary of a CEO to thank for this, is that genuine sort of outward facing role of the business leader is generating income into businesses. This is why I think your podcast works, and a lot of the work we've generated across both businesses come on the back of doing things like this. 5, 6, 7 years ago, you wouldn't have known who the CEO of certain businesses were, yet everybody's scrambling to get onto these big podcasts because it drives business into their companies.
I think and I also think there's a huge amount of value for people just to see the person that they're dealing with.
It's authentic, isn't it?
It is what it is. You see, I think putting yourself out there and just being honest and sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just naturally available to talk about things, be honest about things. I don't operate any differently in my work environment than I do in this podcast studio. I am who I am. I operate how I operate, and being relatable to people and allowing people to see that.
Yeah.
I think that breaks down some barriers.
Yeah, it's really
in terms
important.
of people getting
Super
in touch
important.
with you. So it is important, and long may it continue, because I think the more people that do this, and really, the fundamental point of this podcast is exactly that: is to allow people that are keen. The like-minded people that are keen to improve the industry and keen to contribute to the built environment, to come in and to be able to have a sensible conversation and let the world know who they are, what they look like, what they're trying to do. Without it being overexcited, over-manufactured.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's just about being honest and transparent.
Yeah, and I think, Rick's put out a thing recently, I think it was last year, where they said that, there's a declining entry of people into building surveying courses, QS courses, through traditional routes, through university or through, apprenticeships. The industry is facing like an existential crisis almost of the lack of professionals coming into the industry. And that's another reason why I think what we're building at Chiron is going to be so important, because, there's a requirement for people of your skill set to do the job. I say post Grenfell, it's only getting worse. The requirements are getting more and more stringent, and there's less and less people to deliver that work. So I think that's why it's super important that we're doing what we're doing, because it's going to really help serve the industry.
I think he's a well-required asset, and I look forward to seeing what happens over the next few months and years. What I would like to do is keep in touch with you and follow the journey through. Obviously, there's going to be some significant updates in not too distant future as things develop, and perhaps we can talk about those as and when they become more.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, look, I think fundamentally it's an exciting time. There is a huge backlog in the industry. For various reasons, and anything that we can do to alleviate that is going to be welcomed, certainly by me. So thank you so much for
thanks for having me
and talking about that, and I look forward to the next time we do catch up on it and see where we go next.
Thanks, Ben. Cheers, mate.
No problem.